And welcome to the Village of Bartlett Board meeting for April 15, 2014. I call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Trustee Ahrens? Here. Kammerer?
Here.
Carbonaro?
Here.
Martin?
Here.
Ranky?
Here.
Shipman?
Here.
President Wallace?
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving on to the consent agenda. All items listed as an asterisk are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered at the appropriate point on the agenda. At this point, is there anything that the board wishes to add to the consent agenda?
I'd like to add B1.
B1. We discussed that, I think, at the last meeting, right? Is there any other items? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the amend the consent agenda to add B1.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Trustee Carbonaro, seconded by Trustee Ranky. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Ahrens?
Yes.
Kammerer?
Yes.
Carbonaro?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Ranky?
Yes.
Shipman?
Yes.
Motion carries. Now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda, which includes the board minutes for April 1st, 2014-2015 budget review minutes.
So moved. Second.
BP Gas, Subway, Dunkin' Donuts site plan amendment, Heritage Oaks tree removal, sale of 2014 IRB volume cap, Arts and Bartlett amplifier request, Relay for Life amplifier request, and the municipal property internal auction ordinance-ebay.com.
Now so moved. Sorry.
Moved by Trustee Martin, seconded by Trustee Carbonaro. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Ahrens? Yes. Kammerer?
Yes.
Carbonaro?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Ranky?
Yes.
Shipman?
Yes.
Motion carries. Now I'll entertain a motion to approve the committee minutes from April 1st, 2014.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Trustee Kammerer, seconded by Trustee Martin. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Ahrens?
Abstain.
Kammerer?
Yes.
Carbonaro?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Ranky?
Yes.
Shipman?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is Treasurer's Report. Mr. Martinowicz.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'll start out this evening with the sales tax monthly report. Through February 2014, our fiscal year-to-date sales tax is $1,786,889. It represents a 1.90% increase over last year's budget from the same time period. Currently, we have a budget of $2,010,000, and we are trending real close and expect now at the end of the fiscal year to meet that revenue line item. Moving on to the motor fuel tax allotment report. Fiscal year 2014 revenue through March 2014 is $1,158,839 and represents a 3.43% increase over the same time period last year. The budget for this year is $1,175,000, so I expect that we will meet or exceed the budget for motor fuel tax this year.
Thank you, sir. Next item on the agenda is the President's Report. A couple items on the agenda. First being the Building Safety Month Proclamation. Whereas the Village of Bartlett's continuing efforts to address the critical issues of safety, energy, efficiency, and resilience in the built environment that affect our citizens, both everyday life and times of natural disaster, give us confidence that our structures are safe and sound. And whereas building safety and fire prevention officials, architects, engineers, builders, and others in construction industry work year-round to ensure the safe construction of buildings, and whereas modern building codes include safeguards to protect the public from natural disasters such as hurricanes, snowstorms, tornadoes, wildland fires, and earthquakes. And whereas Building Safety Month reminds the public about the critical role of our community's largely unknown guardians of public safety, our local code officials who assure us of safe, efficient, and livable buildings. And whereas building safety, maximizing resilience, minimizing risks, the theme for Building Safety Month 2014 encourages all Americans to raise awareness of building safe and resilient construction, fire prevention, disaster mitigation, backyard safety, energy efficiency in the construction industry. Appropriate action can ensure that the places where we live, learn, work, worship, and play are safe. And whereas each year in observance of Building Safety Month, Americans are asked to consider projects to improve building safety and sustainability at home and in the community, and to acknowledge the essential service provided to all by local and state building departments and federal agencies in protecting lives and property. Therefore, I, Kevin Wallace, President of the Village of Bartlett, Cook, DuPage, Kane Counties, proclaim the month of May 2014 as Building Safety Month in the Village of Bartlett. If there are no objections from the board, I will so proclaim. Next, under the President's report, there are multiple liquor license renewals. All of these have been checked out, and I'll read the names. Brott's Place, Faro's Restaurant, doing business as El Faro Restaurant. Hanover Township, Jayla Krupa, doing business as Suburbia Liquor. Haj If Inc., doing business as Mr. Quickie's Food Mart. Bartlett Hills Golf Course. Friedman Enterprises Inc., doing business as Bannerman's Sports Grill. Pasta Mia Ltd., Claire Oaks Retirement Community. Highland Park CVS, DBA CVS Pharmacy. Shri Kojiera Group, DBA 7-Eleven. RN McCrane Inc., DBA 7-Eleven. Blackhawk Restaurant Group, LLC Series BS Bartlett, doing business as Betty's Bistro. And Taproom Hospitality, LLC, DBA The Still Bar and Grill, which is a new one. And if there are no objections, I intend to renew the liquor license for these following businesses. Thank you. And before I move on to questions and answers, I know that there's going to be some discussion this evening about some budget items, and we'll attempt to give those in the audience plenty of time to voice their opinions. I've read many, many letters and appreciate the feedback from all the residents that are here. So we'll move along to question and answers. Any members of the board have any questions for the staff at this time?
I have I guess kind of a quick statement. I was excited to see the note from the chief regarding 1,000 residents going through our police department on the open house. And surely a part of that had to do with the unlimited tasty pancakes and sausage served by our fine lions at the wonderful Fire Barn facility. I'm sure that was a part of it, but I think a lot of it goes to the pride that the residents have in their police department and the pride that is shown by all of the members of our police department, the professionalism that it has. And so, once again, if I may be so bold, Chief, well done to you and all the staff and to everybody at Village for this. So, 1,000 people is a pretty impressive number.
Anything else? We'll move along to the town hall portion of the meeting. At this point, we request that anybody who would like to address the board, please step up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and please try to keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Hi, my name's Steve Henriksen, 1623 Fairfax Lane, Bartlett. I think I missed a couple people. I sent an email in support of the History Museum for continued funding of the History Museum. I wasn't sure if I could attend tonight, but I wanted to make sure that everyone understood that I have 2 children, 11 and 6. The KDMRA passports have been a big, it really impacted our lives. We're also involved in the Park District with soccer, which is why I wasn't sure if I could be here tonight. And other items in the community, the library, I think Mary's in attendance. But the History Museum has sparked an interest on a possible career path for my daughter, and I'd hate to see something that's actually working and reaching residents. I know I've talked to other residents about it and promoted it, and it also brings people in from outside of the community right down through the heart of the town. So I'd really hate to see that go away. I also read in the Examiner that there was some confusion about the docent program. The Bartlett letter made it sound like it was an addition to get people like my daughter, who I had her apply for, involved in the History Museum rather than a way to offset some of the functions of the staff. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys clearly understood that and just give your full support to it.
Thank you, Mr. Hendrickson.
I don't know if anybody has any.
Hi, Sandy Whitmer. I live at 933 Sioux Drive in Elgin, Illinois, and I'm speaking tonight on behalf of myself and also my parents, John and Shirley Whitmer, who reside at 129 North Hickory. I know you all received the letter that we sent to you. I'm going to try not to touch on those points. I don't want to waste your time. But I am here tonight to ask the board to consider restoring full funding to the History Museum in next year's budget. I wanted to ask each of you to consider a few things before you vote on the budget tonight. First of all, have you looked at the village's website lately? You probably have. And I know that it will probably be undergoing some changes in the near future, but as it stands now and for the past few years, at the very top of the page it says Village of Bartlett, Illinois, of course, and directly beneath that there are 3 words: history, harmony, and pride. And right under those 3 words is the Bartlett vision statement. Bartlett is a community all are proud to call home, and we are a village that values our past, cherishes our present, and works together to thoughtfully plan for the future. 2 things there: history and valuing our past. They're important enough to be the first things that people see when they come to your website. Have you considered that the museums, both the one here in this building and the historic train station, are destinations, as Mr. Hendrickson said, that actually bring visitors from out of town to the town center? These visitors include former residents, like me, friends and family of current residents, and participants in the Summertime Passport to Adventure program. I've read that plans call for using docents or volunteers to reduce salary expenses of the museum. I would argue that volunteers and docents should be used to actually expand the wonderful programs that you already have in place. Have you considered that it actually takes time, and maybe you have, to recruit, train, organize, and manage a crew of docents and volunteers? You've probably already considered who's going to be responsible for those activities, and I'm not privy to knowing who that will be, but if it is the museum director, have you considered that that responsibility will actually further curtail the time available to maintain the archives, collect and record additions to the collection, create exhibits, and plan engaging programs? Have you considered that the museum director's position is one that requires actually specialized training and knowledge? Replacing part of that position with docents and volunteers is similar to replacing one of the accountants in your financing department with somebody who likes to dabble with numbers. Or replacing a file clerk with somebody who happens to have a lot of time on their hands and likes to alphabetize things. Would you replace one of your paid receptionists at the front desk with somebody who has a lot of time on their hands and just is a very friendly person? I don't know. Sorry, pulled the agenda. Have you considered the history of the History Museum in Bartlett? Those of us who have been here for a long time know that until the village actually made it a priority and dedicated funds for a professional museum director, this village never had a lasting, vibrant, engaging museum and program like the one that so many of us enjoy and appreciate today. Finally, in times such as this, when families are actually struggling to make ends meet, isn't it great that this village has a first-class museum with free programs and activities for its residents to enjoy? I understand that budgets are tricky beasts. I am an executive director at a local government body, so I get it. And it's especially tricky when you have constituents who are urging you to cut things because they don't want their tax dollars to go up. But please consider taking the time tonight to further discuss whether it's really in the best interest of this village to make cuts to this successful program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Whitmer.
Good evening. My name is Maureen Glowacki. I'm a 36-year resident of Bartlett, 20-year plus in Bartlett Women's Club. The Bartlett History Museum retains and stores a lot of Bartlett Women's Club's memorabilia and history. I would like to ask you, I endorse what Sandy said and also Steve, and I would like to ask you to listen. Pam is the keeper of Bartlett's history. It's a very important position. It records all the goings-on in Bartlett. Her heart is in work 100%. You can tell this when we talk with her about Bartlett. I believe if the board were to reduce the hours Pam currently has, it would be detrimental to the accuracy, efficiency, and recording of Bartlett's history. In the Examiner of April 9th, I was acutely aware in the article regarding the budget that the matter I have aforementioned is snuck in at the end, perhaps thinking not many people would see it, or if they did, would not realize the person or impact it would have on Bartlett. No matter how good a docent program, using volunteers, and no mention was made of who would comprise this group, can never have the impact and drive and love of what they do as one such as Pam, who has educated herself for her position because this is what she wants to do as her life's work. I ask you to look elsewhere to make the monetary reductions, not with the position of curator of the Village of Bartlett Museums. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Polacki. Is there anyone else at this time? Hearing none, we'll move on to the standing committee reports. And I assure you folks that it will be discussed as we move on here, once we get down the road here a little bit. The next item on the agenda is standing committee reports, which the first one is the Planning and Zoning Committee, chaired by Trustee Kammerer.
Thank you, President Wallace. There are 3 items this evening under the Planning and Zoning Committee, the first of which is the BP Gas Subway Dunkin' Donuts Site Plan Amendment. Petitioner Eric Carlson, the architect, on behalf of the owner of the BP property at the northwest corner of County Farm and Stearns Road, is proposing a second amendment to the site plan and for that property for an 1,080 square foot addition for a Subway restaurant and Dunkin' Donuts with an accompanying drive-through window. The latest site plan, which was reviewed by the Committee of the Whole on April 1st, 2014, depicts the drive-through window on the south side of the building and other changes from the site plan first reviewed by the board. The revised site plan before the board for a vote also depicts a wider curb cut on Stearns Road, which is subject to approval of the DuPage County Highway Department. The Plan Commission held a public hearing on March 13, 2014, and recommended approval subject to certain conditions. I therefore move to approve Ordinance 2014-21, an ordinance approving of the second site plan amendment for the BP Subway Dunkin' Donuts at the northwest corner of County Farm and Stearns Roads as presented.
Second. It's moved by Trustee Kammerer, seconded by Trustee Martin. Is there any discussion?
My discussion, I would say, would be that I think that the petitioner's gone above and beyond what he had to, and it's I think it's turned out very well. That adding that extra space on that curb cut, I think, is beneficial. It's going to help with the traffic flow. I think it was a great idea. So thanks for following through on that.
I'll add to that we did hear back from Bob Colder at the county, and it's fully within the village's, I guess, jurisdiction. So they have no interest in it, which means that we have no problem doing that cut, the larger cut, but will be done.
Excellent.
I would echo that and say thank you for working and convincing Dunkin' Donuts to follow through with our suggestions.
Yeah, we have a hard enough time getting retail. My kids are going to thank you, too, because this is a bike ride away. So. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Ahrens?
Yes.
Kammerer?
Yes.
Carbonaro,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Ranky,
No.
Shipman.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, the next item under the Planning and Zoning Committee is the MJB Gerber Road re-subdivision, rezoning, and variation. MJ&B Contractors, the owner of the .97-acre lot at 5 North 11 Gerber Road, Bartlett, is seeking to re-subdivide that lot into 2 lots. Lot 1 would include the existing house, and Lot 2 would be built with a new single-family home. The property is currently zoned ER1, Estate Residence Zoning District, and the petitioner is seeking to rezone both new lots to the SR2, Suburban Residence Zoning District. Both lots would meet the minimum size standards for SR2, as each lot will exceed the 80-foot width and the 10,800 square foot lot size requirement. Lastly, the petitioner is requesting a 26.75-foot variation from the 35-foot front yard requirement in the SR2 district for the existing house on new Lot 1. The attached garage is proposed to be removed, and a detached garage will be built on the south side of the existing house in the rear yard. The Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on February 13, 2014, and recommended approval of the subdivision and rezoning request, subject to certain conditions. The Zoning Board of Appeals held a public hearing on March 6, 2014, and recommended approval of the variation request, subject to certain conditions. The Planning and Zoning Committee reviewed this at the April 1, 2014 Committee of the Whole meeting. I move to approve Ordinance 2014-22, an ordinance approving of the rezoning from ER1 to SR2 Suburban Residential, a front yard variance to bring the existing home into conformance, and the final plat of re-subdivision for MJB's Gerber Road re-subdivision as presented.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Cameron, seconded by Trustee Martin. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Ahrens,
Yes.
Kammerer,
Yes.
Carbonaro,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Ranky,
Yes.
Shipman.
Yes.
Motion carries.
And the last item of the Planning and Zoning Committee, the Heritage Oaks tree removal resolution, was covered and approved under the consent agenda. That concludes the Planning and Zoning Committee report for this evening.
Thank you, Trustee Kammerer. Next item on the agenda is under Building Committee. Chairman Martin.
Thank you, Mr. President. B1 was covered under the consent agenda. I have nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Martin. And let the record reflect that I errantly called out A1 instead of B1 on the consent agenda, so the janitorial services contract was a part of the consent agenda. Next item on the agenda is Finance and Golf Committee. Chairman Ranky.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have 4 items on the committee's agenda this evening, all of which I anticipate would be rather lengthy. So let's start with number 1, the 2014 golf rates, and I'll turn that over to Bob if you're comfortable briefing us on those.
New microphone.
This is new. Look out here, huh? Thank you, Chairman Ranky. Before you tonight is a summary of rate changes for the upcoming season that were proposed and reviewed at the last board meeting. In summary here, weekdays, we're recommending a $1 increase in resident and non-resident 18 holes, a $1 increase in resident and non-resident senior junior 18-hole rates, no change in twilight rates, 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. Twilight fees, and also resident senior junior 9 holes. Weekends, we're proposing an increase of $1 for resident non-resident 18 holes, also a $1 increase for resident non-resident noon to 3 p.m. 18 holes, also an increase of $1 for resident non-resident 3 p.m. twilight fees, no change in resident non-resident 5 p.m. twilight, also no change in season passes and cart fees. But these increases that are being proposed will generate approximately $20,000 in additional revenue for the upcoming fiscal year.
Thank you. Any questions? None at all. Why did you decide to raise certain rates by $1 but not others?
Well, if you notice that the rates we didn't increase would be twilight rates. Those are rates that specifically, especially during the weekday, affect our league play and also our family golf at night, where we try to promote free golf for the kids with paid adults. We want to continue to try to promote the game as best we can. The easiest time to do that is during twilight time, late in the day or in the evening, and the same holds true with your weekend what we call a super twilight at 5 p.m. A lot of families are taking advantage of that opportunity to go out and play as a family, and we feel that's very important to try to promote the game and create more players down the road. Season passes and cart fees we increased last year, and that's why we didn't recommend an increase this year.
Thank you. No other comments? Okay, then I move to approve the 2014 golf rates as proposed.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Ranky, seconded by Trustee Kammerer. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Aaron's?
Yes.
Kammerer?
Yes?
Carbonaro?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Ranky?
Yes.
Shipman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, the next item on the agenda is item 2, the 2014-2015 budget adoption resolution. Let me turn this over to our village administrator. I know that we have at least 4 outstanding issues from the previous meetings regarding this, being the truck. We were waiting for Trustee Aaron's to get her input. Issues regarding the museum, Arts and Bartlett budget request, and there's another issue regarding the 2%. So with that, I'll let you.
Well, let's begin with the 2 issues that were clearly not resolved last time. And the first one is the truck. There was some discussion about delaying the purchase of the truck and just renting it when we had the need to, and Public Works Director put together some different options and some numbers, and maybe Paul would want to go over those for the board as the beginning of your discussion on that.
The current truck that we do have, it was asked of me, it is a 12-year-old truck. Current mileage on that is 83,000 miles. Hour meter on that is reading 9,136 hours. Cost of the replacement for a small 35-foot is $100,000 to $110,000, comparing it to the $175 for the 55-foot tree. Lift truck. We did look at leasing a vehicle of the higher size of the 55-foot reach, and it was $3,500 per month. That is a month-to-month lease. There's no other breaks if you do it for 6 months, 8 months, or anything. It is a month-to-month lease on that. Trees that we have in town, we roughly have 15,000 total trees. 3,000 of them are ash. 5,000 of them are ash. Roughly half of our trees in town are above the 35-foot elevation.
So, Paul, just for clarification, the 35-foot truck, we're keeping or we're trading in?
No, the condition of the 12-year-old truck, I don't believe that there's any value left, very much value in that. I would propose to keep that truck, run it till it doesn't run anymore, and that's probably going to be in a short period of time. It is costing us quite a bit to keep it running on an annual basis.
Well, that's what I was thinking, is if we're going to have 2 trucks, then it would be nice to have this one, because at 83,000 miles, I think where I grew up, we just call that just getting broken in. So it's
well, it's a real tough hours on that, miles on that. It's not really the miles that is count as much as what it is the hours. It is a truck that's idling and running a lot, not just running a lot, standing in one location. That's very, very high mileage for this type of a truck, especially for a municipality.
at least we're keeping it to be able to use it for as long as we can then, right?
Yeah.
That is the intention, yes.
Well, to go back to our meeting 2 weeks ago, we did take a quick straw poll to determine whether or not we would purchase the new truck or not. I think we would benefit from another straw poll, so So why don't we go ahead and do that and just indicate whether or not you want to buy that truck? So we'll call the question essentially.
Are we going to be voting on it as well? If we are, then I would suggest that we go the straw vote and just go for it.
Well, it's not a separate item on the agenda. It would be rolled into the budget. So that's the whole purpose of the straw poll. I mean, if you want to do it in a more formal way, I suppose there's ways. I would let the village attorney opine on that issue.
No.
No, I think you're right.
And
I think we should do a straw poll first. What I need to know is which, when we get through, I think there were 4 items. What's in the budget that's before you for a vote now? You know, because then if it's included in there, that would just be part of the motion, and you don't have to vote on that separately.
I believe this truck purchase is in the budget.
The truck
The
is in the budget.
175.
We don't have to have a separate approval.
You do
of that. We
not.
just have to
That's
have
Right. A consensus of the board.
But there's a couple that might not be, so.
Okay,
at the
so
one.
we'll just take them one at a time. Then the straw poll, who would like to go first?
So what's
The issue is whether or not we buy,
question?
well, obviously it's whether or not we buy the truck.
This question.
just
Yeah,
the truck.
just the truck.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, buy the truck.
Yes.
No.
Trustee Cameron?
Yes.
Me?
Please.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes.
No, I think we can wait 1 year.
So it would,
Okay. So that seems to be the consensus of the board. The next issue then, the museum.
Let's take, well, the museum was not an item that was left over from the last agenda. The board had discussed reducing the hours. There was some consensus from that last time, and in fact, we adjusted the budget, and the budget before you now does have the reduction in the hours.
And it went from what to what?
From a little bit below full-time to half-time.
And we're not going to lose the passport, right? And it's still going to be open.
yeah.
I mean, we're not losing any
I think
major services.
I think the point is that we're making every attempt to retain the integrity of the history program while being realistic and getting the financing for that particular department in line. As far as the individual programs, I'm not sure that we can speak to which ones will be around. As far as I understand, the passport program is a program that's ran through multiple different history museums. We're not closing the history museum.
That's correct.
Yeah, this isn't a closure.
That's correct. So if that were the case, then we simply have that in place and did that based on the last meeting where the consensus of the board was for those cuts.
Yeah.
Well, I was deeply concerned about this, and then I've seen a number of the residents' concerns. But it sounded like, from a staff perspective, you were comfortable with being able to continue to operate the museum at about the same quality, but with the reduced staffing. Is that correct? I just want to make sure that we're clear
No,
on
that's
that.
magic. We won't do that. But certainly, I think that we will prioritize our programs. Certainly, Passport to Adventure is critical. I can't imagine that we would reduce that. I think that we will continue to focus on the core programs, and certainly a docent program helps us expand and keep those programs up and perhaps take them out into the schools and do some things that we used to do with staff.
Yeah.
And Ms. Whitmer seemed to characterize the docents as somebody, people with extra time on their hands, but that wasn't my understanding.
No,
Are these gonna
we
be
talked
people
about...
who are going to have graduate degrees? Are these going to be, who are these people going to be?
We talked about two different programs. First of all, a youth docent program, because we thought there was a lot of interest in that. The library has a youth librarian program, and we think that will be very successful. And at the same time, we did want to do some adult docents so that when they're keeping the museum, for instance, over in the train station, we want to make sure that there's an adult there during the hours that it's expanded and that it isn't just a younger person there alone. So I think that the docent program is ambitious, and we intend to do both.
And we're going to properly vet the docents, right? So we're going to
That's
make sure there's
correct.
a
We
criminal
have,
background check and all that kind
and
of
the
stuff.
adults, we do just like you were a soccer coach.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, there is one thing that I'm sorry I wasn't here to express my feelings. And no jokes about my age or my length of residency, thank you. But when I moved into town, it was like magic town, because everyone knew everybody, and I learned so much in those first few years. I learned about the Struckmans and the Schicks and the Humbrocks and all these people who for so many years ago had the vision of a town such as this. Changing the museum program has to be done very carefully. I, of course, am willing to look at the financial picture, because that's why we earn the big bucks up here, right? So we have to always be cognizant of the money that we're spending. But I would urge the rest of the trustees to please see the magic town that I've seen for so long, and to make sure that we always remember the people that came before us and the people that allowed us to be the kind of board we are. And hopefully maybe we don't have to cut the museum budget. Thank you.
I think I made my statements on this at the last meeting, and I'll just reiterate them very briefly. If this is the direction that the board wants to go and that staff says we can manage it, then that's the way that is. I will only add that I will again encourage the staff to work with us in so much as we possibly can to bring this program back to its full capabilities as quickly as we can too. And I know sometimes throughout the year we get some magic, I believe you called it. And if that's the case, then personally I would place this as a high priority for reinstatement.
Does anybody else have any other comments? I would just add that it's certainly not an easy decision when it comes down to what I would consider one of the ingredients of the charm of Bartlett, as I've used that terminology before in speaking with some of the folks that have addressed their concerns. But when it came down to budget discussions, and we had Chief and the Director of Public Works having things cut out of their budget, you got to look at the whole thing and where all the funds are going from our village. So at some point, the necessities and the priorities in my thought process take place. And I'm not saying this isn't a priority. I'm just saying that it's certainly a difficult decision, but one that I would support in the fact that we'll be able to maintain the museum in the way that we can, and hopefully at some stage when the economy might be a little bit better, we can restore some of that programming. That's my thoughts.
I think in a year we should look at the impact what we're doing now has, and instead of like far in the future, maybe we adjust it, and if we said, well, maybe only this much more, we'd have double the people, or, I mean, it's hard to work magic, and Valerie, you do all the time, and thank goodness we have you, but it's one of those tough decisions. But I think if you're, you say we can cover stuff, I always go by what you say, because you haven't let us down yet.
I think I kind of echo Trustee Martin's statement. I think rather than wait a year, could we revisit the issue in 6 months and find out from the residents, find out from a budget perspective and logistics, how are things going? Because then we're not waiting an entire year to turn the gas back up, to throttle up, so to speak. We just wait 6 months and then revisit the issue. I mean, it makes it a little bit more convoluted from your perspective, but I think it would probably help us, and it would certainly be good for the residents to know that we're paying attention to this pretty closely.
We can do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Mraz, you indicated we would not need to vote on this then as a separate?
I believe it's, Valerie stated, or the village administrator stated that this reduction is in the budget as presented and before you for a vote, so you would not need to change it for this item.
Thank you.
Let me move on to the third issue, and I think there are three positions on this third issue, if I recall our last discussion, and that is the funding for the arts in Bartlett. Their current funding is $6,000, and as you know, they have requested $2 additional $1,000 for a total of $8,000. But there has been some discussion, as we have with all of our departments and positions, is it appropriate to look at a further reduction in the amount that we currently provide? And so I think that there were some ideas about reducing that, some ideas about the status quo, and some ideas about considering their requests. So that's as best I can tell you my recollection from the last discussion.
Is there anyone here from Arts and Bartlett that could make reference to their income statement at all?
I don't think so.
No.
I was just curious. I mean, I see that we have a membership increase as an annual report.
Mike?
Yeah.
Move your microphone closer, would you?
I'm trying. I see that they have on their annual report they had a membership increase of 62%. Over up to 282 individuals, and I was just curious whether that. Then they make a comment that their dues. I'm not quite certain how to read this. Was it $175 a year? I'm anticipating. Is that correct, or is it everyone? Is it 282 people that have paid $175 as dues? Then what are the dues for the
dues? They have a scale of dues. There's just the regular dues, family, patron, supporter. There's different classifications, and each one is a different amount.
So we don't have access to that. That wasn't given to us.
No.
Well, and this dovetails with part of my. I'm sorry if I interrupted you.
No, that's fine.
This dovetails with my concerns that I expressed at the last village board meeting. Now we're looking at, another organization's operating statements and their numbers, and, it's not the proper role of the government to look at how this entity operates or doesn't operate. And I think it's dangerous when we pick favorites, and I won't repeat myself again, but I had to say that.
I thought we had talked status quo, and then we were going to put in parameters of what, from then on, what we're going to look at.
Yeah.
We said we were going to do that for next year's budget.
Next year, yeah.
We weren't going to come up with the criteria, since this is before you in this budget now, but you had directed that we come up with some policy guidelines, if you will, for the next year's.
We did not put this extra $2,000 in the budget, correct?
We did not.
So we need to have a vote up or down on whether or not we will.
Yeah, a straw vote on, sort of
Draw
0,
poll.
6,000, 8,000. So we know it's in the budget at 6.
It's in the budget at 6, and let's just do a straw poll to leave it as is.
So it's not a three-way vote. It's just leave it as is or increase by $2,000.
You could see what happens with that, and then go to the next step, depending how this goes.
Only an attorney would come up with a
Yeah, I don't.
straw poll. Okay, so the first.
Are you voting more than once?
No.
Is that the Chicago?
No, I think the way the mayor stated it is first vote on the 6,000.
Okay.
Leave it as is.
Leave it, which should be as is.
And then there's a vote after that, potentially?
Kind of depends what you vote.
Oh, I see.
Leaving it at
Where you're going now.
6,000. If that passes, I guess that's the end of it. If it doesn't, or it's split, then we could go to option 2, which would be 0. Option 3. Why don't you do a straw poll and see where everyone's at first?
Put a number on it when you
okay.
vote.
So you understand the three options. Why don't you just
Right.
give us the one you like the best?
Well, again,
6, 8, or 0.
I spoke on this last time. I said I'm not opposed to the comparatively minor increase that they're asking for, so long as we have a very clear understanding that moving forward, we're going to have guidelines, as Trustee Rankin and as our attorney has suggested, on where we go.
6, 8, or 0.
So then you're going with your...
I'm not opposed to the 8.
Okay. I think it's dangerous to go down the path and expend taxpayer money without any guidance at all, so I'm going to have to go with the 0.
I would like to keep it the same until we have guidelines in force before we think about raising it all or reducing it all. I think it's fair to they were keeping it in the budget. They're probably counting on some money from the city, and so I would say I'd be good with keeping it as it is and then putting the standards in force for the next go around.
I would go for leaving it how it is until we can address in more detail what we're going to do with things like this. I don't want to. Arts and Bartlett has done a good job, but I think donating money. This is taxpayers' money. It's not like we're this giant purse.
Right.
It's taxpayers' money, and to give an organization operating costs rubs me the wrong way. But at the same time, I don't want to pull the rug out from underneath them. So I would go along with keeping it at 6, not staffing the meetings, and we'll address it during the year. How do you like them now?
That was a mouthful.
That was a lot of apples.
Yeah, how did you follow up that? I'm going to make this short and sweet. I'm an accountant. I'm looking at the bottom line, and I'm looking at the hard economy that we have here. I have nothing against the arts in Bartlett. I don't think we have the money. I don't think we should go down this avenue. Guidelines, whatever. I want to go to 0 just so we can get out of any double-edged sword that we're going to face. It's a tough economy. We need to worry about the village of Bartlett and the taxpayers, and I'm going to go with 0.
I think this non-for-profit does a lot for our city. It includes bringing people down for the festivals. And like the mayor said, I don't think there's a lot of places that, with all the cuts at school, that the kids are getting. I'd say keep it the same, though. Times are hard, and I'm not for speeding excess, but they have to make do with what we from before and not increasing it.
Okay, so we have 3 the sames, 2 zeros, and then 1 8. So I guess technically that's a tie. I'm happy to change mine to a 6 because it does make sense. We don't want to pull the rug out from underneath these folks if they are counting on us. And looking at their numbers, they are pretty rough. So I don't want to sabotage them. They do good work, but why don't we just keep it at the 6?
We got 4, 1, and 1.
Right.
Leaving it the same. And that's the way it is in the budget. Let's move on.
Okay. So then the final issue is regarding the 2%?
Yes.
Do I have that right? That kind of came up at the last minute?
I had a pre-meeting conversation with Valerie, and she was open to the idea of moving that maybe till next year so that we can actually save the taxpayers some money, and she left it open for us to vote on.
All right, so we understand this. Why don't we, do you know what the item that seems to be not on our agenda?
It's the 2% COLA adjustment for the salaried.
I can't hear you.
That's a 2% COLA adjustment for the salaried people.
Okay.
Non-union.
So just so everybody in the audience understands this isn't something that's on our agenda. It was discussed prior to the meeting. And I think Trustee Carbonaro has suggested that there's a 2% salary increase for the staff, and he's putting it to the other trustees as to whether or not we could reduce that or eliminate that. Is that accurate?
Yes.
So I will let the chairman of the Finance Committee take it from there.
Okay. Well, we can. Thank you. Let's. Boy, isn't this a thorny issue? Let's. Why don't we do a discussion? Why don't all of the trustees give us their opinion on that issue, and we'll see if we need to do a straw poll or changes the vote in any way. But I think given that it's kind of a little bit later on and it's a thorny issue, let's. Then why don't we start on a trustee by trustee basis, or it can be a free for all.
Can I ask a question?
No.
So in the budget, you have right now a 2% across the board increase for non-union staff.
That's correct.
Okay. If we were to wait and discuss this when we go through the, we always do it in executive session when we discuss the different salaries for different departments and different positions. Is it too late to make that decision at that time?
Yes, the budget needs to be approved by May 1st. You can always amend the budget.
Okay.
If this was to pass, it goes back starting in what date?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
When we do the budget, say, oh, they get a 2%, and then sometimes it's retroactive. Is this retroactive?
No, it is not.
It's, okay.
I'd go for the 2.
I'll keep my comments as brief as I can. I appreciate Trustee Carbonaro bringing this up. As I told him before the meeting, I wish we'd had a little more time to digest this, but certainly this is right, and that's okay. I guess I caution all of us, though, we kind of go down a slippery slope when we start deferring raises, because you're right, it's a thorny issue, and we are talking about taxpayers' money. We're talking about people's money here, as a former trustee reminded me so eloquently once. But the problem is, too, is that we're also talking about our people. We're talking about where the rubber meets the road in this village, and you know, we talked at the beginning about our professional police department and the work that they do, and although this doesn't impact many of them, or most of them, it has some impact on other people within the village. And it's one of those things, too, where if we defer the 2% this year, then where are we next year? Now we're 2% behind where we were hoping to be, and we've set strategically in our goals that we want our people to be at least in the middle of their comparable counterparts in other villages, because we want to try and hire the very best and retain the very best. And so when we get into this issue of deferring COLA raises, again, that becomes what I would term as a slippery slope, because next year now we're 2% behind, and by giving them 2%, we're not bringing them back up, we're still then 2% behind. According to the budget document, we are balanced. We're balanced at this point. 2% seems reasonable to me, considering the type of work that staff does, the quality of work that staff does, and the overall services that they provide to the residents and to those of us who sit on this dais. So my feeling is that I would not be in favor of eliminating the 2% COLA raise.
Well, my concern would be that the slippery slope is that our employees and us as a society have always come to expect a pay raise. I don't know that that's something we should be expecting every year. I don't know that in our economy that there are organizations out there that I've sit on other boards and they have not given their employees pay raises because of this economy. Everybody would like to get a pay raise, but sometimes it's just not feasible. And so the slippery slope, I think, is that we're putting people in a position where they're going to always ask for a pay raise, and we want that if we can afford it and if the economy can sustain it. But I don't know that that's possible. And that right now, I don't know their economy is in a position to say that, yeah, sure, let's continue to give the pay raises. So I would be against raising the 2%.
The non-union.
Yeah, right.
Didn't we
You do
negotiate
realize
this already, though?
Yes, we have.
And so when we go to negotiate and then we decide to change it right before it passes, that doesn't look good.
Well, this is a non-union. The police are receiving a 3% this year, and the Public Works, which this board approved, are receiving a 2.5%.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but when we are in the back room, we have to give our employees that are non-union pretty much the same as the union, or compatible. Is that not
Actually,
right?
you don't have
We
to.
don't.
No, and several years ago, we did exactly as Trustee Carbonaro was suggesting. We gave the non-union zero one year, and there's never been a time when our public works or our police unions have negotiated zero raises. So we have done it before. It certainly is legal and within the board's purview to do so.
And I think passing a 2% does not necessarily mean that's what they're going to get. But if you don't budget, you can't spend it. So, in other words, if we passed no raise at all, that's the way it would have to be. But at least with 2%, you can or not negotiate, but I think that the managers have a much better chance at rewarding their good employees.
Jeff, how much are we saving if we do this?
It's about $106,000 for this year.
Let's split the difference, 1%.
There's a number of competing issues here. On the one hand, we have the value of our staff, which is incredible. They do a wonderful job for the residents. The streets are plowed. They do a great job. So obviously, we want to value those folks. Part of my larger problem with the budget is the amount of money that we're spending. I think there are other things that we can cut. I wish we would have had this discussion about the 2% earlier on, because we put in a tremendous amount of work to get this budget where it is. Just plugging the hole in the golf course required weeks, if not months, we've been dealing with this issue. So to come in now, it kind of upsets the apple cart. I wish we would have had time to talk about this. I guess I would be keen on splitting the difference too, but I want to make sure that our employees know that they're valued.
Correct me if I'm wrong, this was brought up at the end of the last meeting?
It was part of the meeting before last where we brought up several details that were hanging out of the budget. That's correct.
Okay. The reason I discussed this was we're not equating the value of the employees. We're not belittling them. I'm looking at the perception of the taxpayer. We're in the worst recession in the history of the United States. Newsflash. The U.S. government is $1.62 trillion in the hole. The state of Illinois is $13 billion in the hole. Forget it, they're not going to get it. U46 is $68 million. We have some debt here. And we have a lot of people in town who are losing their jobs, losing their homes. Maybe it's time to give them a little break. And that was the discussion that I had with Valerie, that maybe we can breathe for a year. Not that we're trying to belittle the employees. Yes, they're very valuable, but we're in a horrible recession. Can we give the taxpayers a break? Is what I asked.
At the 1% level, you still are able to give out bonuses to deserving people, or how would that? Or everyone get a clear 1% across the board? How would that work?
We have an incentive package, but the 1% is across the board, and the incentives are across the board at one time at the top of the range.
Valerie, have you or Jeff done comparables on this?
Pardon?
Have you or Jeff done comparables on this?
We do. We do them year-round. We do the analysis to see where the positions stand in terms of our comparables.
I mean, as far as the COLAs, do we do that as well?
Absolutely.
Off the top of your head, or do you have those facts? Where are we at?
I think 2% is about as low as most of the towns has given. Now, that's non-union. You understand the union raises are higher, correct, and in most towns they're higher than 2% as well.
And we're currently still under the average. Is that not correct?
I think we're about in the middle of the average for most of our positions, and that has always been the board's policy.
And I want to make it clear, too, it's not that I don't understand the concerns about the economy or the people's money, because I truly, truly do. But we have talked about this before, and I think it is a way of reward and valuing our employees. And the other thing, too, although this is nothing that we're going to see today or next year or 5 years from, or maybe even 5 years from now, but when the economy turns around again, God willing, and other people are regularly getting 5 and 8 and 10% raises, our municipal employees will still be getting 2 and 3 and if they're very lucky, a 4% raise. I can tell you that from a 21-year career in municipal service. That we don't have the luxury of being able to compete for sales bonuses or signing bonuses or going in and asking the boss for an extra $5,000 because we did such a great job on that last project. So the way that our employer, the municipality or the county or the state or whoever it is, shows their appreciation is by that bid every year. So I've said more than I needed to, but that's my position.
I personally think the $106,000 that we're trying to keep has been made up multiple times. Chief, how many times, or how long has it been? You've had open slots that you haven't hired, which means someone else has to cover that. You've had, what, 2 positions that you could have hired a year and a half ago? Okay, Bob, how many did you have? 3 that you haven't hired. And Paul? Only had 1. Brian? 2? That's definitely over 106. We ask our employees, if anyone has a problem with any department over there, tell me which one. We'll look at that. We ask these guys to go head to the wall every time, and they always come through for us. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay, I think we've heard from all of the trustees. The budget, as it's written, contains that 2% increase. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so then the proper way to deal with this is, again, like the museum, we just vote on the budget resolution. Is that correct, Mr. Mraz?
Yes.
Okay. So having said that, I move to approve Resolution 2014-22? 23. A resolution adopting the fiscal year 2014-2015 budget.
Second.
It's moved by Trustee Ranke, seconded by Trustee Shipman. Is there any discussion? I would just add, it takes me a little while to process my thoughts when new stuff comes up at a board meeting. I've employed
better, trust me.
Yeah, I've employed a lot of people, and I've personally overpaid to keep good staff and my own employ. So I know that when you have a good thing going, which not everybody is privy to some of the angst that goes on in many other communities, like mayors get to hear, but when you do have a good thing going and you've got staff that's appreciative of their jobs and of their village, the retention of those folks is pretty important when it comes to the synergy of the community. I understand the value of a dollar. I get that. But I also understand the value of morale and the vital importance of how a village is looked at from the outside as how well their inside is working. And I think it's important to show them that they're doing a good job. Since we've been here, we've reduced an assistant to the administrator and never replaced them. We're looking at cutting back some on different departments, and that's good. I think it's necessary in these times. So just to be on the record, I think it's important that we show the staff that we would support them with this 2%. That's my opinion.
And I think during this budget cycle, we've done a number of things differently than we've done in the past. I've heard those remarks from staff. I've heard that from Ms. Solomons. It seems like, when we really did work very hard, the budget itself, is a compromise. Does it go as far as I'd like? No. I'd like to see further cuts. I think we should do better for the taxpayers. But at the same time, it's a complicated machine. So I don't want to throw one thing out of whack and then all of a sudden the museum is suffering. I want to make sure that we're still safe and the police department's operating and the rest of the departments as well. So it's a compromise. It's not perfect, but it has the virtue of being done and ready to be voted on.
If I may add something, it just shows that the staff is willing to work, because the discussion happened before the meeting, and she still allowed me to discuss that today. So that in itself is just showing you that Valerie's open to ideas, throw it out there, And Jeff, maybe you can help me out here, but we're the bottom line kind of guys. We always have to be on the dark side and throw stuff out there and be devil's advocate. That's what we're supposed to do.
Well,
Thank you.
Any other discussion? So just to clarify, this is for the adoption of the resolution. If there's no other discussion, would the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Aaron's?
yes.
Camera?
Yes.
Carbonaro?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Ranky?
Yes.
Shipman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, next item on Finance and Golf Committee is professional service contracts.
Looks good.
Looks like we have contracts with regards to Mr. Mraz's office and Mr. Krupp's office. Jeff, can you please elaborate for us?
Oh, sure, Trustee Rankin, no problem. In the memo I put together this evening, there are contracts from Brian Mraz's office and Bob Krupp's office. Just to summarize it, Brian is asking for a $10 per hour increase for services rendered in the categories of general services, which are attendance at meetings, drafting ordinances, etc., and for court appearances and preparation for ordinary litigation matters. There are no increases in the contract for special activities, development activities, or bond issues. As far as Bob Krupp is concerned, there are no increases to his hourly rates or services that he charges for, and that's been like that for a number of years. So these are really the only two professional service contracts that we annually put in front of the board for approval.
Any questions?
We need to make a move here. Then we can discuss, I think.
All right, so then I move to approve Resolution 2014-24, a resolution approving of the professional service agreement between the Village of Bartlett and Brian E. Mraz and Associates, P.C.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Ranky, seconded by Trustee Shipman. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Aaron's?
Yes.
Camera?
No.
Carbonaro?
No.
Martin?
Yes.
Ranky?
Yes.
Shipman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
At the next item, I move to approve Resolution 2014-25, a resolution approving of the professional service agreement between the Village of Bartlett and the law offices of Robert J. Krupp, P.C.
Second.
It's moved by Trustee Ranky, seconded by Trustee Martin. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Aaron's?
Yes.
Camera?
Yes.
Carbonaro?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Ranky?
Yes.
Shipman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Last but not least, we have item number 4, the Bartlett Hills Golf Course equipment purchase. So let's hear from someone on staff regarding the equipment. Bob, you want to fill us in on that?
Thank you. I'd like to defer to Kevin Drew. Kevin Drew is purchasing these two items. He's done a tremendous amount of research and work toward the purchase of these two items, so I think he can elaborate on it a little better than I can.
Yes, thank you. This is a program that is offered through basically the city of Tucson. We're kind of piggybacking on a contract that the state of Illinois used to offer for the purchase of a municipal equipment, but they have not had a state contract, the state of Illinois, in the last probably at least 2 years, maybe 3 years. Brian Mraz can talk about the legal aspects, but as far as the pricing goes, if we were to go on a formal bid with this, we usually get anywhere between a 5 to 10% discount from manufactured suggested retail price. This program offers about a 22% discount for these items, so it's quite a bit of good savings. So,
do we have to sell them? Would we get more money if we auctioned off those items, or that's part of the program, we have to give them?
We don't have to. The thing about this is our equipment, it's very specialized. So to go out and try to, on a bid or auction through eBay, we've got a very limited market. And the other thing is our equipment's 12, 13 years old. It's pretty worn. From what the distributors tell me, that they try to break even on this stuff. So it doesn't seem like we're getting a lot, but it's about the best we're going to do.
Discussion.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I don't think so.
Okay. I move the passage, I move to approve Resolution 2014-26, a resolution to waive bids and approve the purchase of golf course maintenance equipment through the National Intergovernmental Purchasing Alliance.
So moved.
Second.
It's moved by Trustee Ranke, seconded by Trustee Carbonaro. Is there any discussion?
Brian, how does this work that we get on?
For the record, it's a discount program.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do we get onto another state's discount program?
Well, Illinois, as Kevin stated, the joint purchasing statute and the state of Illinois doesn't have this item available and hasn't for a couple of years. So there are these alliances where, if you're a member, you can take advantage of large volume purchasing. And what you have to look at then is, does Illinois have a contract with that alliance? They don't in this case. Then you have to look at, was it publicly bid, and does that state sort of follow the Illinois format? Is it just an RFP or was it bid? Tucson did bid it, and those prices are held out to us. So technically, it doesn't fall under the joint purchasing statute, but it was bid. The price, staff went and verified the price and looked at not only the Toro, but a comparable John Deere. That's that other number. And the discounts are here. So it's only a technicality, really, that you're technically waiving bids. It was bid. It just doesn't strictly fall within the Illinois statute. And so...
Because if we could get a 60% reduction on the cost of other,
say
for instance, a 5-foot bucket truck.
I
say we buy everything through Tucson's joint purchasing agreement.
Well, and the other thing is you can't, these dealers have geographic areas, so you have to go through that specific dealer, and this dealer, is held to this discounted price if you buy through the alliance. So it's a great, it's a good deal.
Very, very good staff then, Kevin, for picking that up and making that savings then. Thank you.
I noticed that the Park District was just spending about $25,000 for a mower, and I'm not that familiar with all of this equipment because I don't run a golf course. But would we be able to partner with the Park District and use one together? Could we maybe share one? Is that even feasible?
They use their mower every day. That's one of the problems.
So then that would answer my question if that's accurate.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
We do share some equipment, but it's things that are only used a couple times a year. So we do that.
Okay. Thank you.
And just, is there any other discussion? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Ahrens?
Yes.
Cammer?
Yes.
Carbonaro?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Ranke?
Yes.
Shipman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Mr. President, item number
We're
It's been a long night, hasn't it?
Item number 5 was already addressed on the consent agenda, fun or unfun as that was. So that completes the Finance and Golf Committee for this evening.
Thank you, Trustee Ranke. Next item on the agenda is License and Ordinance Committee. Trustee Carbonaro.
Thank you, Mr. President. Items 1 and 2 are already on the consent agenda. Item number 3 is infected or dangerous tree ordinance. I'll turn this over to Mr. Mraz.
Thank you, Trustee Carbonaro. This came about, was raised at a board meeting by Trustee Ahrens about having an ordinance to deal with infected trees, because the village is dealing with the emerald ash borer. And what about those same diseased trees on private property? And if they're not removed, it spreads and it becomes a bigger problem. So we looked at ordinances from other towns and took a combination of ordinances from different municipalities. And in talking to staff and our new village arborist, we came up with an ordinance that would declare diseased trees and also dangerous trees. So, for example, a tree struck by lightning that's got a limb hanging, usually you get the owner's cooperation. But if you don't, they're not only endangering themselves and their property, but when they are on private property, depending on where the tree is situated, they may also be endangering their neighbors or their neighbor's property. So this ordinance declares it a nuisance. It authorizes the arborist to go on to private property and check a tree to see, and really it's going to be, in my view, complaint-driven. You see, have an obvious dead tree. We're not running around. We don't have the staff. We don't have the time. We don't have the equipment to go looking for extra work. We're phasing in our Parkway project over a few years, but that's what we would need. So you would deal with infected trees. There's a definition, and also of dangerous trees. And there'd be a notice sent to the neighbor, giving them 30 days to either do it themselves. But if it's a large tree, we would expect they would hire a contractor that's licensed and insured, because for the same reasons, a tree topples over, it could do a lot of damage. And so they're required to abate that. Now, if certain things can be treated chemically, only emerald ash borer, and there's a debate as to whether that's even successful or not, but a homeowner may choose to hire someone who's licensed by the state to apply those type of chemicals. If they don't, they could be fined. And if they don't, the village has the right, but not the obligation, to go onto the property and remove it. And then to lien the property, much like we do for weeds when they're not cut, for that cost. And again, there's notice. We have a little different notice provision. If it's a resident living in that house, we actually have to give it to them, whereas if it's an owner that's out of town, it can be mailed by certified mail. And
so there is some criteria that the arborist would have to do before going onto the property.
Well, we're not going to go looking. I think these are going to be someone complaining.
But was there a conflict with trespassing by the arborist on the person's property?
No, because you're declaring diseased trees a nuisance, and that is sort of the almost like in police. There's some probable cause. We see a dead tree. We're not going around looking for things, going on the property looking for this, but it's to give us the authority to deal with the problem.
But the way it's written, they
could go on
the property and look around for things if they wanted to.
In theory.
If they got a complaint.
No.
It doesn't say there has to be a complaint, but that's
what I'm saying.
Trigger.
It doesn't make reference to the fact that there has to be a complaint.
Right.
And so the arborist, in theory, could say, I'm just going to go walk on this property and look for a dead tree and make an issue of it. Is that right?
That's right. That's right. But
Just
I don't
bring
see
it
that.
up a point.
Well,
my problem is,
Brian, if I may, let me clarify a point on that.
Not that that's going to happen, but it's. I get concerned about the people's right to enjoy their property.
Right, but we're talking about a dangerous or diseased tree. I'm sorry, Trustee Shipman.
Real quickly, if I can just clarify a point that I'm not sure I heard correctly. The arborist can't just go wandering around private property looking for dead trees. Even the arborist needs
some
bit more than that. He's going to have to look and see on somebody's private property, oh, look, I think that's a damaged or dead tree. In other words, you can't just go randomly hopping fence to fence.
No.
through the apple orchard neighborhood looking for bad trees.
Right.
That's what I want to clarify.
Yeah.
Let me just interject something. Right now, and I agree with Brian, it's complaint-driven. We work, the code officers get the complaints most of the time, work with our arborist. The tree is brought to our attention, usually because it's diseased, dead, or fallen down from a windstorm. Right now, we use a loosely worded portion of our nuisance ordinance to get them to remove trees. We effectively do it. This kind of puts more teeth in the ordinance. It's not going to be something where the arborist is way too busy to go around looking from tree to tree. But it's kind of similar to all the one you approved earlier today, where it's in the tree easement, where there is some teeth in it. This kind of gives us the ability to go on the private property. We've got 2 or 3 right now we're working on that are complaint-driven. This kind of ties it up, puts it in the nuisance section, and gives it a little more teeth. And it'll still be the code officers working with the arborist. The arborist has the knowledge and ability to declare that nuisance dangerous, diseased, or I don't know what the other term is.
But we're notifying the property owner before we go into the property. That's what I want to make. That's what I want to make sure that we're doing. That we're just not showing up because the neighbor says as they have a bad tree, and then all of a sudden the arborist is just walking around the property without notifying the homeowner. I want to make sure that their property is respected.
Right. Similar like any code enforcement, even when you can see it from the street, we still go up to the resident, knock on the door and say, ma'am, sir, we'd like to take a look at your property. We got a complaint. You've got three junk cars in your yard. We let them know. They try to, so we're not going to change that process.
There are people that call every month complaining about a tree just because they don't like their neighbors. Do we have any of that? That's what
It's usually not a tree, but it's some other thing.
Well, I mean,
the tree owner?
There's a lot of that.
Is it the tree owner?
Pardon?
It's the tree owner?
It's surprising, some of the complaints we get.
And does the arborist say, no, I already checked that one out,
we
keep
have
a record,
to act
right?
as arbitrators in a lot of situations and point out that it's really not a problem or it is a problem. I mean, there are... It can put tree, car, swing set, shed. You just fill in the blank, and that's what happens.
But we keep all the complaints on file so we know.
Keep them on file.
Okay.
We track them, and if they are violations, we follow up on them.
It's written broadly because not all the time is the neighbor home or coming to the door responding. We try and contact, but you can have people we've got these vacant properties, and so it's written so that we can go and deal with the issue when you can't get a hold of people. So it's written more broadly than it's used in practice. But you're kind of drafting it for unfortunately, the worst case scenario and the owner who won't cooperate and take care of the problem that is affecting his or her neighbor.
I'd like to say 2 things. First, I think that this is, pardon the pun, but it's a growing problem in the village. As more trees are maturing, they're getting older, we have to deal with the EAB. Well, I guess, and to continue with the puns, and this is hardly cutting edge, okay? So there's other communities that have this in place. But having said all of that, and I don't mean that jokingly, Section 435A, when I read it, it sounds pretty aggressive to me. The village arborist may enter upon private property at all reasonable times for the purposes of inspecting trees and may remove sample of specimens as required, et cetera, and then the second sentence, it shall be unlawful for any person to prevent the village arborist from entering on private property for purposes of carrying out the village arborist duties, et cetera, et cetera. So I just want to make sure that, we're absolutely clear that this Section A is only going to come into play when there has been a complaint. Because I know that I don't want some government official coming onto my property and taking a boring of my tree. I think there's got to be a basis, and I'm assuming, Council, that you have plenty of constitutional support for paragraph A. I realize I've been out of circulation on that issue for a little while, but I'm assuming that there's some good case law on that.
Well, how about to give people comfort, we could start that paragraph with based on a complaint.
I think that would probably...
Complaint?
I think that would help.
That'd be better.
think Jim said that we were going to handle that through the code enforcement.
Well,
So there's going to be a complaint.
To
I mean, a complaint meaning a call-in that,
To Trustee Kammerer's
concern.
point and concern, and Trustee Ranke's obvious note for detail, it's pretty harsh the way it's worded now. So I think it would be wise to change that up a little bit and make sure that we don't have people traipsing through our backyard when they see my tree hanging down a little bit.
I guess the flip side to that, though, is then that now remove the arborist's ability to, if he sees a dead tree or damaged tree, he can do nothing until he receives an outside complaint?
That's the other side of it.
He can complain.
Well,
Get him a little sign that says arborist working. Do we have one of those?
I guess my initial feeling, and I completely
That's why I had it
understand.
the way I had it.
I completely understand your concern and what you were saying. I guess my initial feeling on this, though, too, was that at the end of the day, we can set the tone on how this is enforced. Is that correct, Madam Administrator?
Well, I would rather lean on, personally, I would rather lean on the side of actual complaints than villages witnessing something and getting into some residents' business. That's my opinion. I'd rather lean on the side of actually having some neighbor complain and following up on that versus us spearheading it.
Because it's not necessarily about code enforcement in our administration today. It's about code enforcement in administration in 5 or 10 or 20 years.
Right.
So then the proper procedure on this would then what? We would approve this or table it or?
No, you could approve it with that amendment.
Amend the language now and then include that. Do it right now.
I entertain a motion to amend the
435A.
ordinance 2014 27 to...
Has there been a motion yet to approve this ordinance?
No, there's
No.
So then it could be a simple motion to approve of this ordinance and the title with the addition of, in section 4-35A, at the start of that paragraph, to add the words "based on a complaint, comma," and otherwise approve it as presented.
Like he said.
So moved.
Second.
It's moved by Trustee Carbonaro, seconded by Trustee Ranke to approve ordinance 2014-27 with an amendment to include the words "based on a complaint" in front of 4-3-5, infected trees or dangerous trees, item A, first paragraph. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Aaron's?
Yes.
Kammerer?
Yes?
Carbonaro?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Ranke?
Yes.
Shipman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, I thought as long as we were talking about trees, I would take a moment and introduce our new arborist who is in the audience this evening. This is Sarah Perry. She comes from the Morton Arboretum, if I recall correctly, and has her license in...
And you have no intention of hopping the fence?
Welcome.
Orchard looking for disease?
Right.
All right.
Right.
I still think we should get her a sign that says arborist at work.
That's right.
So she didn't get shot
For
walking back
safety,
people's yards.
I hope you come back after this meeting.
Thank you.
Are you going to ask her if she's going to join the chamber?
Ms. Salmons.
No.
And that concludes my report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Trustee Carbonaro. And welcome to the village.
Yes.
Next item on the agenda is under Police and Health Committee, Chairman Shipman.
The one item under our committee was the municipal internet auction ordinance to sell some old squad cars and sport utility vehicles on eBay, and that was covered under the consent agenda, Mayor. I'd just add again, real briefly again, to Chief, nice job on looking for avenues to get additional money, because I believe the last time we spoke on this, generally we get more from an eBay auction than we do at municipal mayors and managers. Is that correct? Very nice.
Yeah.
That's all.
Thank you, Trustee Shipman. Next item on the agenda is under Public Works Committee, Chairman Ahrens.
Thank you. Our first agenda item is we get all the glamour stuff on our committee, don't we, Paul? Maybe that'll change when you're not here, though. I don't know. The Apple Orchard lift station generator replacement bids, recommendation of the Director of Public Works, we should award the bid to Volt Electric at an amount of $69,975. So at this time, I would move the village board approve Resolution 2014-28, a resolution approving the agreement between the Village of Bartlett and Volt Electric for the Apple Orchard Lift Station Generator Replacement Project.
Second.
It's been moved by Trustee Aaron's, seconded by Trustee Hammer. Clerk, is there any discussion on the Volt submitted low bid?
I did want to say one thing, that this particular lift station emergency generator has been in service for nearly 30 years, and boy, I'm about in the same boat, and I might need to be replaced soon, too.
How are we going to bid that one?
I don't know if that's an RFP or not. Is there any other discussion other than Trustee Aaron's lengthy time of service?
Are we voting on her, or are we voting on
The clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Aaron's.
Yes.
Camera.
Yes.
Carbonaro.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Ranky.
Yes.
Shipman.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Our second agenda item is the 2014 sidewalk replacement project bids. Notice to bidders went out on February 2nd. Bids were due back on March 20th. And it is the recommendation of our Public Works Director to award the bid to Schroeder and Schroeder Incorporated, and the project amount is $55,000. So at this time, I move the Village Board approve Resolution 2014-29 for the 2014 sidewalk replacement project in the amount of $55,000 to Schroeder and Schroeder Incorporated, Skokie, Illinois.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Aaron, seconded by Trustee Martin. Is there any discussion on the sidewalk replacement project? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Aaron's.
Yes.
Camera.
Yes.
Carbonaro.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Ranky.
Yes.
Shipman.
Abstain.
The motion carries.
Our third agenda item is Federal Urban Routes Resolution. As you know, the DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference has adopted policies for the functional classification of roadways in DuPage County. In order to keep up with present and future traffic demands, we are currently making application to DMMC to designate Struckman Boulevard and Mayflower Lane as federal urban routes. I have a question right away before we go any further. If it's a federal urban route, why is it called FAU?
Pardon me?
It should be FUR.
Federal aid urban?
Oh.
Federal aid urban.
It's a designation. It's called, the program's Federal Aid to Urban Highways, so they call it
Federal
FAU
Aid to
route.
Urban.
Yes. Even though it's the Federal Urban Route
Oh, well,
designation.
now don't I feel silly?
Well, it should be Interior Defense Teal. It should be FATU.
Yeah. Sure.
It used to have a longer acronym.
Okay.
Obviously, that.
Well, at any rate, it's to our benefit to oblige. So, I move the Village Board approve Resolution 2014-30, a resolution requesting the designation of Struckman Boulevard and Mayflower Lane as federal urban routes.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Aaron, seconded by Trustee Ranky. Is there any discussion?
Do we get any money for this, or free signs, or anything, or what?
We'll be able to do in the future is this road with this type of a designation, it will be eligible for other grant monies.
Okay.
It just
So it's our
opens up the
benefit
doors
to do
for
this.
other additional grant monies, additional opportunities. This is part of the process, part of the application is a resolution adopted by you folks, goes part of the package. This is just one additional step.
And does this application cost Bartlett anything?
There's no fee for the application.
Any other discussion? We all learned something this evening about federal urban routes and the acronym.
defer.
Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Aaron's?
Yes.
Camera?
Yes?
Carbonaro?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Ranky?
Yes.
Chipman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
One last comment I'd like to make under the Public Works Committee, and it is directed at our Public Works Director, Paul Kester. And I want to thank you, Paul, for teaching me so many, many things about public works. What a berm is, what the difference between effluent and affluent, what a lift station really does. It just, so many things, too countless to, and there were other things, but we won't talk about those. I, for one, as a trustee, want to say thank you. Thank you for your tolerance, thank you for your teaching, and thank you so much for being here in Bartlett for such a long time and giving us such good service. Thank you very much. And that concludes my long-winded portion of the board meeting.
Thank you, Trustee Aaron's. Next item under the agenda is new business. At this point, does anyone on the board have new business to address?
I do. I was fortunate enough to participate in the Principal for the Day program through U46, a few Fridays ago. And I spent the day at Sycamore Trails, and two things struck me. And I think it's important because it's important to our residents, especially the little ones. The traffic. Traffic at the drop-off in the morning is dangerous. It's frightening. The way people drive is scary. I have to use the thesaurus to come up with more words, but I'm worried about people getting hurt. There's car accidents there. I'd like to see us do more as a village, and I know that probably involves expenditures, but I'd like to see us do more about the traffic, or at least partner up maybe more closely with U46. I know that the chief sends officers out there, but there's got to be some more we can do. And the other component was vandalism. Apparently Sycamore Trails is hit with an awful lot of vandalism. Part of that is the fact that U46 has decided to shut off the lights, which makes it a little bit darker, obviously, at night. But that's one of their choices, but it still is happening in our town, and it is public property. And if somebody can vandalize a school, they sure can do it to the village hall or some other public property that does affect us. And so I guess I'd like to see us maybe reach out a little bit more with U46. It'd be a great opportunity to partner up with them to do something about this.
Do you want to talk about our program that we've been...
Yeah, it's ironic you bring that up. We met with them approximately 4 weeks ago, and we initiated the contact. We brought our concerns to their attention. My staff has already been downtown with the superintendent's office working on an environmental design for them, and so far we've been impressed with their cooperation.
Terrific.
But we initiated that. Yeah.
Yes.
And we're pretty impressed with how fast they've come along based on our recommendations. We did a PowerPoint presentation for them of our concerns, and because of that, I don't want to get into the details because it's their financing, but they are looking at some environmental redesigning to make that a safer area after hours. Additionally, my staff is meeting and doing the same presentation for their PTO meeting tomorrow morning.
Great. Do you know if they're doing that to all the schools? They're turning off all the lights? All the U46 schools?
It's a little unique behind Sycamore Trails in that they have the field and the easement and the bike path, and it's pretty dark out there and pretty inviting to the teenage crowd that lives in that area. So we've made several suggestions, and they agree.
Motion sensor? Or motion?
It'll ultimately be up to them, but that was part of the suggestions. That's correct.
Thanks, Chief.
Over by, was it Prospect? I've noticed a couple times when I go over near where Vince lives, the Centennial, there's a little bit of a traffic jam there in the morning, too. So...
It's true. A lot of our local schools were designed primarily as walk-to, and that's just not what we're seeing. So traffic will always be a challenge. We can do enforcement, and we do, and we redirect efforts there, and we work with their staff on a regular basis, but there are some design issues that they could take interest in as well, because they were designed primarily for the neighborhood, their neighborhood schools.
I can't blame any parent for dropping off, especially with this extreme winter, so, but...
You have three crossing guards on Prospect over by Centennial.
I'm having a hard time hearing you.
You have three crossing guards by Centennial. 2, 3. So that's not too bad. I don't know what you have at Sycamore, though.
Yeah, we do a traffic study on a regular basis. I'm sorry? 3.
You have three at Centennial.
Correct.
How many do you have at Sycamore?
I'd have to do the research on. There's, I believe, 2 in the neighborhood, but we could double check on that.
Okay.
I'll bring that to your attention.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ranke, Trustee Ranke. I was principal for the day, too, and all it really did for me is make me feel old. Is there any other new business?
Newsflash.
Hearing none, we'll move on to any questions the trustees have for staff, or?
Very briefly, I'll echo TL's comments about Paul. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, sir. It's been a pleasure. I think there'll be more festivities to come.
Another cake?
We'll start showing up as a resident now, complaining about this.
There's nothing else to go to the order. We will...
He's going to sit on that side. 5-minute recess.
We'll have a 5-minute recess in between the board meeting and the committee of the whole meeting. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Trustee Ranke, seconded by Trustee Martin. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Aaron's?
Yes.
Hammer?
Here.
Carbonaro?
Here.
Martin?
Yes.
Ranke?
Yes.
Shipman?
Yes.
We're adjourned.